Max, tell me when you were born and where you were born, what your maiden name was, and things like that.
All right, I was born in Washington, D.C. on Bates Street. And I don't know what hospital it was, but I was born in Washington, D.C. I was the oldest one. I was the first one.
What year was this?
1911.
And what was your mother and father's names?
My mother's name was Rena, R-E-N-A, and my father's name was Charles Henry. So there was always a Charles in this big family.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he was descended from an Englishman.
Do you remember your address on Bates Street?
I think, I don't remember the address where my mother and father lived, but I remember the address when my mother died. My grandmother took us, and it was 816 Bates Street, and it was upstairs in the, they called them flats in those days. Now they call them something else. Anyhow, it was 816 Bates Street. It was in the middle of the block. My mother and father lived on the corner of Bates Street, and then Grandma lived across the street in 816. My Aunt Bessie lived across from my grandmother, who was Grandma's daughter, and my Uncle Willie lived across the street from Grandma also. We had back and forth. We lived, the apartment that we lived in was just one bedroom.
One bedroom?
My grandma and my Aunt Anna and Aunt Alice lived there before we moved in with, after my mother died. So there were 6 of us in one bedroom. And it was a big room. And I remember one Christmas, I being the oldest one, I was the devil. And I was put up to doing a lot of things. I remember my sister my sister Ethel putting a chair in front of a transom. They used to have a glass transom up over the door that you could see through to the next room.
Right. And
she fixed a chair and so that I could step up on it and look at it to see all the Christmas ornaments and everything. So I was watching for Santa Claus.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how they did all the things that they did. My grandmother took us, 3 of us in when my mother died, and I would have been 6. My mother died on the 17th of December of 1917.
I wanted to ask you, do you remember when horses and buggies were around?
Yes, and I told you I was going to have a story, but I remember one time my grandmother told me to go to the grocery store, which is just half a block down the street. Well, there was a wagon parked in front of the grocery store delivering something with a horse. And somebody said something to me, and I was running down the street, and running down the street, I turned around real fast and hit. There was a chain across the back of the lift. Mm-hmm. And I ran into it and hit myself on the head here. I had a scar for a long time.
Ouch.
But that was my that was my introduction to a horse and buggy.
Oh. So with these cars back then, they must have been like the Model T type of cars?
Oh, yes. My father finally got a car, and he had a Model T, and I remember after my daddy remarried, my stepmother had a friend in Rockville, Maryland, and we used to go visit them. And there was just 2 lanes going down to Rockville, Maryland. It was a day's trip. And Daddy had this car and had the eyes and glass windows.
What's the eyes and glass windows?
Well, they weren't, they were like...
Is that like when they're broken into
plastic,
2 panes?
like plastic.
Oh, yeah?
And they were framed like a window with the leather, and they rolled up under the roof.
Oh, really?
Oh, my Lord, does this bring memories back to me.
So tell me about your schooling. How?
Oh, I went to the Twinings Elementary School at 7th and T Street. And then went to the Henry Polk School, which was right in the same compound. And then I graduated from elementary to Columbia Junior High School. It was the only junior high school in the whole city of Washington. As a matter of fact, I had a friend that came all the way from Anacostia.
Maryland?
No, Anacostia is in D.C., down by the Navy Yard.
Oh.
And I went to Columbia Junior High School, and I never graduated. I graduated from junior high school. And then I went to business school, business high school. You had a choice of going to a business school or go to college. And I chose business school because I knew I was going to have to go to work. So I went to business high school, and that's where I got my training for secretarial work, shorthand and typing. And then I even went to night school because I went to work before I was 16 years old.
Really?
I went to work in June or July, and I wouldn't be 16 until January.
What kind of work was that?
Well, I went to work at Garfinkel's, Julius Garfinkel's, at 13th and F Street. It was a very select ladies' store. And the old man, I remember the old man, Julius Garfinkel, he was queer as anybody could possibly be. Beautiful man.
It was his store.
It was his store.
You remember Mr. Garfinkel?
Oh yeah. Oh, he was very much in presence there. And so my Aunt Anna was in the dress department down there, and she got me a job as what did they call them in those days? Well, I was just to help to take. In those days, they didn't have displays on racks and things like that. Everything was behind closed doors. It was a very select store. And she would know her customers. My aunt would know her customers when they came in and would select clothes for her to see. And I would have to go back and get them and bring them out.
And all that.
And then when she was through with them, I'd have to take them back and put them back. I started earning $13.50 a week.
We'll get to the Willard Hotel. I know you used to work
there.
there.
Yeah, I worked at the Willard Hotel.
And that's where you met Grandpa.
My cousin Marie, my Aunt Ada that took us in to live with her, worked in there as a telephone operator. So she got me a job down there.
Had some connections.
I worked at the switchboard in Willard Hotel. And I guess I was there for a couple of years, because then I went to work at the Cavalier Hotel on 14th Street.
What'd you do there?
Telephone operator. Gosh, it blows my mind.
You lived right in a city, or a very urban environment.
Well, while I was at Garfinkel, I was reading that there, the old man used to have me do some modeling. He would go to, he and Mrs. Farrell, who was a buyer for dresses, would go to Paris to make selections. And would bring all these things back from France. And he would have me to model everything. Dresses and furs and just everything that was to be modeled. And that's how I started doing the modeling.
Now, you would model in front of people for photographs, or what?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like you'd walk down the aisle with people watching?
Well, in those days it was not an aisle, it was sort of like it was an aisle between people on either side, but it was in the store.
It would be like an event where people would see the new fashions.
Right, he would have people come in to show them the clothes that he had brought back. And that was the modeling that I used to do. And the clothes were simply horrible, looking back on.
Oh, yeah?
Heavily beaded clothes. They weighed more than you almost. In those days, I wasn't very big. But the clothes would just have holes for arms and a hole for the neck. And everything else was beaded, heavily beaded. Good gosh.
You must have thought you were quite something being the model
Oh,
with
I did.
Garfinkel's.
I was the only one. He didn't choose anybody else. I don't ever remember anybody else being doing any modeling, because I did modeling for all the things that he brought back. Furs and clothes and all kinds of clothes, sport clothes, mostly evening clothes, a lot of evening clothes. He brought some beautiful things back. He had quite a taste for lovely things.
Was this in the 20s or 30s?
This was, I wasn't 16 or 17. So it would be 1920.
So this,
26, 27.
so the style could you describe it as the flapper style? Or?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Jason had a question. He wanted to know what you would do on a typical Saturday night when you were about 19 years old.
A lot of fun.
Give me some stories.
A lot of fun.
Like what comes to mind?
Yeah, I remember. I lived with these friends of mine, Bee and Bill Shinnick, there by the Cavalier Hotel.
You had moved out of your house and moved in with some friends?
Yeah, I moved in from Aunt Ada's. Yeah,
Was this the first time when you were on your own?
Yeah, and that's when I was working at the Cavalier Hotel, and we lived in an apartment, and they had a bootlegger right across the hall from us.
Was this during Prohibition?
Yeah, this was during Prohibition, and I always had to have a date on Saturday night, and Bill Shinnick always found that he worked at the printing office in Washington, D.C., and he always had a date for me on Saturday night, and we had some experiences.
You mean like blind dates sometimes?
Yeah, it would be blind date, yeah, and we'd double date. He and his wife, they were just a real darling couple, and we'd go to different places. One place I remember very vividly, we went to was in Baltimore, and he had to rap on the door to get in and go in. And I remember they used to serve us Limburger cheese on rye bread with beer. That was when beer first came in.
Oh yeah.
And they used to take alcohol and put caramel drops in it to make whiskey. And then to make gin, they put juniper berries in it. So
wow.
You had the same basis for both things. Caramel for the whiskey and juniper berries for the gin.
Interesting.
And if they had a bad lot, the bad lot was when the gin would cloud up and they'd sell it cheap.
People did what they had to do, I guess.
Oh my God, this is so crazy. Oh wow, just wow.
Did they have music in those speakeasies? Did they have a live entertainment?
I don't remember any entertainment. It was wild just going into a speakeasy.
Because you knew it was illegal?
That was the experience itself.
Did you know it was illegal and you were kind of young and daring and it was the hip thing to do?
Oh, yes, of course it was. I mean, if you went to a speakeasy, you were top dog.